Hey everybody, how's it going? Let's talk about your home recording studio. Today we are going to be reviewing the ADAM A7X monitors. Great looking speakers that Adam sent me. I'm looking forward to giving them a good workout. I did get them unboxed and everything last week, and so let's start things off by taking a look at some of that footage first, and then we'll come back here. We'll get them kind of set up. You can see I've got them up over here. Let's get them kind of calibrated a little bit. I got my SPL meter. I've got a measurement microphone on deck over here ready to set up and you know, maybe do a couple of EQ sweeps and compare the ADAM A7X to the only other pair of monitors I've ever owned, which is Yamaha HS80M. All right, let's cut away to the footage that I shot previously, and I'll see you right back here in just a few minutes. Oh my goodness, that is one heavy box. And there's two of them here. So, all right, let's just go ahead and tear into this guy. I've been looking forward to this for a couple days. All right, we've got a box within a box. One moment while I deal with this here. Okay, so that was the more shipping packaging. This is the retail packaging that they come in. There's a little bit of glare there, but all right. So in the box here, we have got the manual. Let me actually, I am just gonna kind of flip through this here real quick, because one thing that I was really impressed with Yamaha, at least the Yamaha of old, was how thorough their manuals are. And so this has got a little just kind of dear customer page, set up and quick start, some connections, stereo linking. Yeah, so this is very good. This is what I like to see. I'm not just going to go word for word through this or anything, but they give you some pointers about setting up your monitors, about where with respect to your listening position you're going to put them. So I really like to see this kind of thing, because they're not making any assumptions about what you may or may not understand about studio monitors and their placement and kind of their role within your room. So let's get this top layer of, these are very well packed. We got some nice open cell foam here that has the speaker just totally suspended within the box, so the speaker isn't just resting against any of the sides of the box. So I like to see that. So yeah, they come in this nice little, it's a super soft little just kind of shroud around them to protect them from scratches or any dings or anything like that. So let's get this fella off here and see what we're dealing with. Okay, I feel like this is some sort of grand unveiling or something. I'm super excited to see these things. So let's lift the little shroud off, and I'll get that with the rest of the packing stuff over there for now. And yeah, it's just a black box. Now, here, let's spin it around. All right, let me flip this around here so we can get a little bit better lighting, and let's see what we can do. All right, there we go. So yeah, we're looking at them sideways here. So the main thing that I'm really interested in about these is this ribbon tweeter. And you can kind of see it's this like corrugated little thing here. It's not just like a little dome like most tweeters you would see. So I'm really kind of curious about that. We've got this beautiful kind of, yeah, I think you can kind of see that there in the picture, just this kind of all like metallic woofer there. With, you know, a little dome. And, oh man, that just looks really good. Here, let's spin this around this way. And we can see on the front here, the most obvious thing to me right here is that these are front ported. I'm really excited to see to kind of hear how these front ports, you know, sound in this room. And on the front, we've got our, I like that they put this on the front. Yamaha puts all this stuff on the back, including the ports. But the overall volume control, we got a center detented volume control. So it's detented at 0 dB. That is really cool. And we actually have our power switch on the front as well. All right, let's flip it around and let's take a look at the rear. Okay, this is actually a little surprising. So for our inputs, we have, I guess I would have expected to see like an XLR and a TRS. you know, two balanced inputs. But these, you know, I guess a little more versatile. So we have an unbalanced in, so an RCA style, and then we have an XLR for a balanced input, for a more, you know, coming from a more kind of, you know, pro audio kind of source. Now here are the controls that we saw mentioned in the manual. So we have a high shelf, so it looks like we can adjust the high frequencies. So if after some critical listening, you notice that they're just reproducing a little too much or a little too little high frequencies, you can put a little high shelf on there between -6 and +6 dB. So that's a 12 dB range. That's pretty good. We've also got a low shelf, same thing, minus and +6 dB. And then we have a tweeter level that goes from -4 to +4 dB. So I guess you can just adjust the overall level of the that ribbon tweeter compared to what the main 7-inch driver is doing. Okay, yeah, these all might come in handy, so that gives us a fair amount of kind of tuning, so we can kind of tune these to our particular room and our particular needs and our particular tastes. That's good. All right, here we have behind a little plastic shield, we have a switch between the 120 to 220 volt. So that's actually pretty cool. So basically US or kind of European voltage level. So it looks like we are set to 115. Since I'm in the US, that's where I want it, so I'm not gonna mess with that. And then we got our, you know, standard power plug here. Now, this being my first ever monitor review, you know, I'm a little bit at a loss of what all to cover here, so I would be more than happy if you guys have any questions or anything to list them down in the comments below, and I'll definitely answer any questions that that you may have about them. So I'm not even sure what the universe of things that a monitor review would cover, you know, especially over the internet when you're not here in the room with me listening alongside me. So. All right, so there's some initial impressions, got it out of the box. In the meantime, since I shot that last week, I've since rounded up some cables so I can actually get the new ADAMs kind of positioned more appropriately. You can see how high they're sitting up there. So I've got a couple of Oralex Mopads underneath them with the little wedgie thing flipped around backwards so it angles them downwards. So the tweeters are pretty much pointing to my listening position. So speaking of my listening position, right now in my listening position, I have both an SPL meter and a measurement microphone. So let's take a quick look at these. So my SPL meter is the cheapo Radio Shack SPL meter. Not great, but it'll get the job done. I think you can get these for about 30 or 35 bucks or something like that. And next to it, you know, within reasonable closeness, I have Behringer's kind of cheapo measurement microphone. So this is like an Omni that's supposed to be, you know, relatively flat. Given what it costs, I'm not exactly sure how much I trust it. We're going for pretty darn close. We just want to be able to get an idea that we are comparing apples to apples with levels, and that we can kind of see what the EQ curve of these speakers in this room look like next to each other. All right, well, let's get started here. Okay, so I am not going to purport to be any sort of an expert with Room EQ Wizard, but that's what I have fired up here. So I have the dB meter running, and so you know, you can see it's just constantly measuring here. So I'm going to calibrate this real quick. So let's, I've done a little bit of setup in advance here, but let's take a quick look. I'm going to do calibrate. So right now it's set up to output out of just this left Yamaha here for calibration purposes. So I'm going to click the button up here, and I'm going to get blasted right in the ear because I'm right next to it, but let me move real quick. And I'll click this calibrate button here, and hopefully my calibration's still good, and we'll get about 85 dB when I play pink noise through one of my Yamahas. All right, that's enough of that. So what does this say? Max SPL with this calibration is 123 dB. That's really freaking loud, so I hope nothing gets up to 123 dB. But we'll say okay. All right, now let's switch over to the ADAMs and let's get those calibrated. So I'm gonna go out, instead of out analog 1, I'm gonna go out analog 5. And even though this thing doesn't really matter, I'll go ahead and set it to analog 6 for whatever reason. Okay. So let's do that again. And okay. All right, so max SPL 124. So, okay, so they're not exactly the same, but I'm gonna call that close enough. You know, they're within a dB. The problem with, the reason I wanna get these volume match is because I'm gonna be swapping back and forth between them and kind of listening and comparing. And one of those kind of psychoacoustic things that happens with humans is when something's louder, we tend to equate that with better. And so I don't want to be biased by just having one speaker turned up, or one set of speakers turned up way louder than the other, and end up thinking like, oh man, this one sounds so much better, when it's just because it's louder, it's not because it's better. All right, so I guess while I've got Room EQ Wizard fired up here, let's do a couple of EQ sweeps. And I'm gonna step out of the room here because, man, that gets a little painful to listen to. So we're gonna sweep from 20 hertz all the way up to 20,000 hertz, you know, in this room, and kind of see what the EQ curve looks like with each set of speakers. All right, here we go. Okay, here we go. So I've got the Yamaha is in red and the ADAMs are in blue. So this should be a pretty good kind of side-by-side comparison of what kind of frequency range or frequency response in this particular room, you know, with this particular setup, we can see. So we can kind of compare and contrast here a little bit. So definitely the Yamahas reach down, since they are 8-inch drivers, not 7-inch like the A7X are. So I would kind of expect the Yamahas to be more responsive in the low frequencies. They both definitely, you know, excite this kind of 50 hertz, 40 to 50 hertz node of this room. But yeah, the Yamaha, the HS80M, definitely have just more bass down to lower frequencies. Not really a huge surprise or anything. But, you know, we're pitting a larger enclosure in the Yamahas with a larger driver in the Yamahas. So I would kind of expect that. So, you know, they're pretty much neck and neck. You know, they both, you know, definitely excite some of the same weirdness in this room. It looks like the ADAMs maybe have just a little teeny tiny bit of a scoop, you know, in that 300 to 400 hertz range. And, you know, yeah, they kind of intertwine around each other. There's not any huge differences until like this area here. This is kind of curious. And I think this does kind of illustrate a little bit more of the ADAM's kind of signature sound, to where they seem to just kind of almost scoop out a little bit. So this is just above 2K, and they returned to that level at about a little over 4K. So 2K to 4K is kind of like almost scooped a little bit. And then they're definitely more excited up in that, you know, 5K. And then whatever this is, I think this is just some artifact of the room. This is the blue squiggle we're looking at here. I'm not exactly sure how to explain that. But you can look at, in comparison to the Yamahas, you know, kind of keep their presence here, you know, up through 3K instead of scooping out like the ADAMs in blue here do. So the Yamahas in red, you know, definitely keep a pretty strong mid presence until about 3K, and then they kind of scoop out and come back at, you know, the super high frequencies. And in the little bit of A/B testing, A/B listening that I've done so far, yeah, I think that that's pretty consistent with what I hear. I know that this is just a picture, and a picture doesn't really tell us anything other than what the picture looks like, but at least it's based on the measurements we just took. So your results may vary because your room is different, your acoustic treatment's different, you know, everything. So wherever the room modes of your room are, depending on your dimensions of your room, like these peaks and valleys are going to kind of move around more than likely. But I don't really think that this is a room mode. This, I think, it must be, because that's too weird. So, okay, enough of looking at pictures. Let's, really the only kind of reference material that I have handy is just MP3s, and I know. I have a feeling everything that I've done here so far, there's going to be just a lot of people, and also if anybody from ADAM is watching, I'm sure they're all just going, oh, geez, why did we give this guy our speakers? But, but hey, you know, this is a home studio. We just want things, you know, in the ballpark at least, just so we know we're kind of getting an apples to apples comparison. My room's not perfect, neither is the room of almost any of you watching. If you do have a perfect room, hey, leave a comment below. I want to know how you did it. So let's just do a little bit of just kind of listening on some reference material. Unfortunately, with all the copyright business going on lately, I'm not going to really be able to play any commercial mixes, so let me just kind of dig around my own collection. I think I'm just going to leave the lavalier mic on and just listen. You know, you guys will have to listen through that. I don't really have many good alternatives. All right, so the way I got things set up here, the way I'm going to flip between speakers is just through Windows here. So I'm just going to play some stuff through Media Player. Yes, these are MP3s, so I know it's not ideal. But Windows Media Player is going to play through the Windows sound system. And the Windows sound system is controlled through this sound panel here. And so I can tell it, so speakers is going to be my analog 1 and 2, which is going to be the Yamahas. And analog 5 and 6 is going to be the ADAMs. So just by real-time kind of switching back and forth, I don't have a monitor controller, so that would make this way easier if I had a way to just kind of at the push of a button flip between two sets of speakers, but I only recently got a second set of speakers here, so I haven't yet geared up with a monitor controller, so sorry about that. But this is just the way I'm going to have to do it. So whenever I'm on speakers, it's going to be the Yamaha, and whenever I am on analog 5 and 6, that's going to be the ADAMs. So this is just an acoustic guitar, so let's just listen to this real quick. And first the Yamahas. Okay. Oh yeah. Okay. Okay, all right, no doubt about it, they're very different sounding speakers. Okay, that was, you know, just an acoustic guitar. I mean, just right off the bat, I can tell that the ADAMs are definitely much more detailed in the high end. And they definitely have what, to my ears, sounds like a bit of a high frequency lift. Like kind of like you would get on like a vocal microphone, like a large diaphragm condenser, you know, so up in that kind of, you know, 5K and above kind of range. Like they definitely sound like very detailed and a little, you know, more kind of aggressive in that frequency range. Also the mids, you know, the mids on those two are very different. And I think that our Room EQ Wizard graphs kind of reinforce what I'm hearing here. The Yamahas just sound sweeter to me, like they sound like, and of course I've been listening to them every day for, you know, 2 years and at least a few times a week for a few years before that. So, you know, I've been listening to those Yamahas for a long time. My opinions and you know, what sounds good to me has really been shaped around how those Yamahas sound. But they definitely sound like sweeter. Like it's something that I would want to listen recreationally on, right? I mean, the Yamahas are detailed, but something about those mids and highs are just more kind of pleasant. And the ADAMs are definitely, you know, their mids are just shifted a little bit. You know, it sounds like the mids of the Yamahas are a little more present, just a little lower in the mids, and the mids of the ADAMs are present a little higher in the mids. Which definitely kind of gives them a more kind of aggressive sound, you know, those kind of high mids. And again, I think that that our kind of graphs from REW definitely kind of reinforce that. All right, let's find something else to listen to real quick. All right, so this mix is like a distorted electric guitar. There's some bass guitar and some drums. Pretty simple mix, not a particularly good mix or anything, but at least it has a pretty good variety of stuff, a little more in the low end. So let's take a quick listen and let's remind myself. Okay, so we're listening to the Yamahas, and I'll flip back and forth a couple times. Wow, yeah, the ADAMs definitely have just a lot more kind of high mid and high frequency energy. So kind of final thoughts here. If this is going to be a review, you know, what's my opinion, you know, for what it's worth. Now, you've heard through the filter of this, you know, not so great sounding microphone, the differences between a pair of speakers that cost $1,500 versus a pair of speakers that cost about $700. You know, so about, you know, we're talking about 100%, you know, price difference. Is it worth it? Is it worth spending twice as much on a pair of speakers based on what the Yamahas can give you? That's a tough one to answer, and I'm not really gonna, you know, put my foot down on one side of the line or the other. But what I can say are the Yamahas are an excellent pair of speakers. I really couldn't recommend against them at all. I think that for any home studio, would be proud to have a pair of those Yamahas in them. And now for twice the price, are the ADAMs twice as good? Well, no, of course not. You know, there's a lot of things that principle, you know, you could apply that principle to, right? So like, you know, $150 interface, like, you know, $150 Focusrite 2i2 versus like my $1,500 RME. Is my RME 10 times better than a $150 interface? No, it's not. You'd be crazy if you thought it was. But like that's a little bit more about what features it brings. You know, what does it offer over the other offerings at lower price points? And are those things worth it? Are they suited to you? And I think the same kind of principle applies here. You know, so the ADAMs, no, they're not twice as good as a pair of Yamahas. No, you know, I think it'd be kind of crazy to think that they would be. But I do think that they are demonstrably better in certain ways. I think that the places that they exaggerate and the places that they kind of de-emphasize across the frequency spectrum are going to influence me to make better mixes. And I think that the amount of detail, the stereo imaging, it is very solid. And I think that just that amount of detail that they give in the higher frequencies are also going to allow me to make better, more informed decisions as I'm mixing and making, you know, all those little micro decisions that add up to your final mix. You know, 1 dB here and half a dB there and a little more compression on that and a little less EQ on that, and let's scoop some of this out and let's boost some of that. All those little decisions you're making all along the way, you're making based on what you're hearing. You're making those decisions based on the feedback from your monitoring system. And I honestly do think that the ADAMs are going to influence me to make better mixing decisions, which I believe is going to yield, you know, better mixes. So there you go. That's my kind of official stance on this. And I hope that this review and everything has been at least a little bit of help to you. If you're looking to step up, upgrade your monitors, at least now you've got a little bit of info about what one of the, you know, hundreds of different options are out there. I think that anybody would be proud to have a pair of these A7Xs in their home studio. I think they sound good. I think they will only do favors to your mixes, my mixes, and I guess time will tell, and I'll come back, I'm sure, here with another review in the future. And in the meantime, take a look here in the next few weeks, hopefully for a remix of my ADAM soundtrack submission. And I guess until then, that'll do it for me this time, and I will see you guys next time.